Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. I am so excited for this week's conversation on Lift Your Legacy. Bracha Goetz has written 35 children's books on some of the most difficult topics you can imagine. Topics like abuse and addiction, depression, death, where is God, all of these kind of things which are, questions and part of our world, but how do you tell a kid about these sort of things? So Bracha, after graduating from Harvard, and she shares her story with us, found Judaism and found the teachings of Judaism to be so transformative that she embraced them with a full heart, and then really wanted to take her talent of writing and her ability to take these very difficult topics and distill them down and to essentially create the books that she wished she had been exposed to as a child. And her books are phenomenal bestsellers and really kind of the go-to source when parents try to approach these difficult topics with their children. But the thing I really want you to pay attention to is her positivity and how, despite the fact, or I guess because of the fact that she is taking her background in Torah and her background in Judaism and dealing with all these difficult topics, she just exudes life and exudes happiness. And so many of us are dealing with challenging things in our life, but with the proper perspective, you can have this amazing sense of happiness and calmness and positivity no matter what life throws at you. So with no further ado, Bracha Goetz.
Bracha, thank you so much. You are a extremely prolific author that has written over 35 children's books on some of the most difficult topics around about personal safety and talking about abuse, etc. How did you wind up doing what you're doing?
I would say I started searching at age 12. That's when I started searching for more meaning in my life. I just couldn't believe that what I saw around me was all there was to life. So I was searching for more. And I was born Jewish, but I didn't realize that Judaism was spiritual. So I was searching for spirituality in Buddhism, in Christian Science, I would say in environmentalism, in social justice movements, all kinds of ways that I was searching for what was missing in my life and for meaning. So I kept searching, and I had a lot of interesting experiences along the way. And I ended up, I remember I wasn't doing that great in school until I got into, I was involved with Christian Science, and the idea of is that I found elements of truth and value in everything that I was exploring.
When you were saying in school, how old were you at this point, just to clarify?
When I was a teenager, I wasn't doing all that great in school. But when I got more into Christian Science and things like that, I started realizing God has infinite potential. So then if I could take on some of that infinite potential, I could really open my brain up and start learning about everything. And so I started doing well in school at just the right time, actually. So I ended up going to Harvard, and I had a great time there. I loved it. I remember, this has nothing to do with anything, but when my parents brought me around to all the different schools, we went and we explored the different colleges, and when I went to Harvard Square, there were all these drug addicts laying in the street. It was real kind of hippieville sort of, and I go, this is where I want to be. And my parents were like, oh no, I can't believe it. But it seemed like a really exciting place to be, and it was great. So I was there. I was there for 3 years because there was a special program. If you take AP tests, you could place out of your first year.
So you skipped your first year at Harvard because you tested out of it.
Right.
Good.
Right. So
okay. Awesome.
I was there for 3 years, and then I went on to medical school, and I was studying to be a psychiatrist. That was my goal. I was a psych major in pre-med at Harvard. So I was always basically dating non-Jews along the way and stuff. And when I was in medical school, by this point, my mother wasn't too happy that I was only dating non-Jews. My boyfriend in medical school was, by then he was a Southern Baptist, and so she was like, "Why don't you go to Israel for the summer?" So so they helped me. So I applied for a position as a working as a volunteer in the oncology ward at Hadassah Hospital. And basically my mother said to me, "You could do whatever you want in Israel. Just don't contact this one guy who became a religious fanatic that I knew from my childhood." So of course, immediately I got in touch with him, and I said to him, I want to be a psychiatrist, but I still don't know the meaning to life, why life is worth living. He said, "When you come, I'm going to show you some places to go and you can learn about that." So he did. He met me at Hadassah Hospital, and he took me to Neve, Yerushalayim, and Or Sameach. Or Sameach had a small women's division for like.
What years were this? It's so funny. I went to Or Sameach also. What years were these?
I was there. It was the summer of '78.
Awesome.
And so I was there. There were very few people. There were like 10 women. And they were like real excited because they were just building up this school. So I walked in and I went to the first class. I didn't know half of what they were talking about because it was a lot in Hebrew. And I felt like I'm a doodler and I draw also. So I was sketching while I was there, and I drew a picture of, yay! It was this creature jumping up in the sky. Like I felt like I was home. Like I felt like I finally found the missing piece that I was missing in my life, that I'd been searching for. It sounds crazy. I went to one class and I felt like this is what I was looking for. And I didn't even understand it all that much, but it was the people, it was the atmosphere, it was the openness to knowledge, it was the lack of cynicism and sarcasm, and it was the presence of idealism and hope and a sense of purity, and just such a realness that I wanted. So after a week, I moved out of Hadassah and I moved into Or Sameach, and I started. One really funny thing. The first night I spent there, I said to one of the women there, I said, "Tell me everything I have to do. I want to do everything from the beginning. I want to do it all right." I think by the time I got to breakfast, I said, "I've had enough of this, like enough. I can't do all these things. This is too much. Forget about it." So I took it more slowly, not really all that slowly, but because I loved it so much. And I just started learning and doing things. So I ended up taking a year's leave of absence from medical school. I was, considering maybe I'd transfer to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv University had a school for Americans to go to medical school. But then I decided I'm the kind of person, I couldn't really combine a medical career with what I wanted to do in terms of my Jewish life. So
that's so interesting. You're saying, why not? And what did you feel? It's interesting because you came from the love for the way that the mind works and the idea of potential and opportunity, but then you felt that it was a diatribe, a divergence, I guess you can say, of the path.
Yeah, definitely. A person can be a Torah observant and be a physician, but I couldn't personally. I'm the kind of person that devotes myself very entirely to what I'm doing. And I really wanted to raise my children and be there for them and be at home with my children if I could. So I just, I started, it sounds funny, but a couple of months after I was there, I started going out on dates and trying to meet somebody to marry, because I felt like I needed that support with me in order to keep doing what I was doing. And I met my wonderful husband, and it was really funny too, because I went out with a lot of guys, and he was like the 10th person I went out with in like a month, because nobody went out with me a second date. It was like they go like, you're like right off the boat. You don't know, I don't know what you're. He was the only person that just saw my potential. You know, he didn't really care that I was so new. He had been Torah observant for 3 years, and he was, you know, I guess he saw potential, and so that was wonderful.
So see, this was literally how many months after you got there?
Oh my gosh. I met him in October, and I came at the end of June. Yeah, it was really quick. Okay, so and I met him in a sukkah, and I say that the sukkah became a chuppah. That's really how it turned out. And I, you know, there was so much trust involved, and we're very lucky. So we've been married now 38 years, thank God. Yeah.
Mazel tov. You met your, so you decided that you needed to raise a Jewish family, that the medical track was off for a little bit, or forever.
Yeah. So then we lived in Jerusalem for a couple of years, and then we started a yishuv, a settlement in the Judean hills, and we were the original settlers there. And when I got out there, oh my gosh, I was so inspired to be creative. And like poems were pouring out of me, and songs and books. I started sitting outside with my children then. By then I had a couple of children. And I started writing in notebooks while they'd be playing in the playground out there. And I wrote my first book. I sent it out, and I was astounded. I sent it to America, and I got back a letter like 6 weeks later that the book was accepted. And from then on, I just started writing, you know.
These are children's books.
Children's books. And I really wanted to write the books I wished I had as a child. The books that would show me the path to meaning. I wanted to expose children to the nourishment that I wanted, the spiritual nourishment I wanted as a child. So people think it's funny, like they think you went to Harvard, you're probably intellectual, and you're writing children's books. But that to me is, I'm into getting to the essence of life in the most simple way. I like to explain the deepest concepts in life in the most simple way possible. So that's what I do. And also in a joyful way, in a delightful way, so that it can enter children's hearts.
So how do you walk that barrier of being simple and joyous while being able to present a very serious idea?
Exactly. So it affected my own family, sexual abuse. And so it was actually, the request came from my children. One of my children said, you are a children's book writer, and this happened to your own family. You have to do this for the world. You've got to protect other children. And Orthodox children, we didn't have a book that was for our culture of Orthodox children specifically. There were plenty of books about this subject, but they might not be as accessible to the Orthodox people. And the whole subject was very taboo, and it wasn't being discussed enough. And so I wrote these two, well, actually there's two books. It's Let's Stay Safe, if you see this, and Private Places also. Private Places just focuses on the issue of sexual abuse, and Let's Stay Safe, I had the idea to put it as one normative safety issue like another normative safety issue, so that, you know, it wouldn't raise eyebrows. It's stuck right in the middle of the book as a safety issue. So basically what I want to see is, as Balei Tshuva or Gerim, you know, we were not satisfied with the status quo in our lives. And so we are less afraid, I feel, to make changes. When we see that there's a lacking in the Orthodox world, or there's something that could be better, we're not so afraid to fix it. We don't have to accept the status quo, because we never did. And we see how that benefited our lives to not accept the status quo, and to try to better our world. So
Can I stop you on that and just ask you a little bit more? So how did you get over your, one of the issues that I've oftentimes had trouble articulating both to myself and to others is as a Balchuva, someone that grows up with an entirely different or, a removed set of values from the culture that we go into. In a lot of ways, we become like the children. It's like we go back to children and it's like, okay, so like you said, like, okay, to start me from zero, like, what do I do here? And we make these massive life changes based on that almost, a couple years, in your case is even less, a couple months or years of knowledge. And then all of a sudden you have all these real responsibilities of setting up a home and raising kids and all kind of stuff. How do you find the courage or find the ability to look at something that you have, this tradition that we have and this lifestyle that we have that is part of what appeals really is the fact that it's not just made up, and you can look back in the museum and see that your great 10,000 generations ago, not that much, but that far back, this is how we did it. So where did you develop that self-confidence to be able to say, this system actually doesn't work until I put this part into it, or this could work so much better if I add this element?
Right, that's a great point. All I could say is I grew up with a lot of love and joy in my life. So that did give me a lot of confidence in life. I even back to Harvard, my parents were like, why do you want to go to Harvard? You could just go to the city college right here, but let's just go and experience life to the fullest. I don't know, I always wanted to do that, why not, So I think that my parents gave me a lot of love, and I don't know, I'm not afraid to try new things. And even if I was a newbie as a Balchuva, my neshama, is just as much a part of God's as anybody else's soul, So we shouldn't be intimidated if we're new to being Orthodox, because we have a lot to offer. Everybody, each person's soul is so unique and shines in such a beautifully unique way. So every person has so much to offer. So that's.
So I just want to articulate what I think. I just want to say back what I think I'm hearing you say, because it's it's somewhat counterintuitive that the ability to build. I guess this is in children, and perhaps you could say even beyond, the ability to build, I guess you could say, confidence and self-awareness is through joy and happiness. Is that what you're saying?
I do believe that very much, and I try to infuse my books, even if it's on a very serious topic, with a lot of joy. Sometimes orthodoxy can seem too serious. And it's really important that we experience all the joy. This was something that Rev Noach Weinberg was so into. And I think that drew me into this more than anything else, is that he said our purpose here is to experience the most pleasure possible. That seems counterintuitive to what people think of as orthodoxy, but that is really the truth. We're here to experience the greatest pleasures possible. And those are the deepest pleasures, the most lasting pleasures. And I feel that that's our purpose in life. God made us to give to us. He wants to give us the greatest pleasure possible. Sometimes that pleasure doesn't arrive until we go through a lot of pain. It's not like this is all dippy do, but like sometimes there's a lot of pain involved to get to that pleasure. But once we get to it, nothing compares. And also, one of the things I do is we worked a lot with people in recovery, people with all types of addictions. And this is something that my memoir is going to go into a lot too, about overcoming addictions. And basically, what happens with addiction, I've learned, is that the soul gets covered up. It gets covered up with a lot of garbage from all the abuse that's happened in a person's life. And so sometimes people can barely recognize their soul. But the reason that they develop the particular addiction that they have is because the pain is so great from their soul not getting the fulfillment that it needs. The pain is unbearable. And so to assuage that pain, that's what the addiction does. The addiction is to take away the pain temporarily. And basically what Rav Noach is teaching us is that spiritual nourishment provides the lasting pleasure, the pleasure that doesn't go away, like with the pleasures that there are temporary pleasures that we get from addictions, but they don't last, and they end up putting us into worse places afterwards. But the spiritual pleasures fill the empty place within us that is, they give nourishment to the soul, and that's what the soul is craving. And when a person has been abused, then that craving is so intense and so painful and unbearable that it's necessary for them to get rid of that pain, even temporarily, with whatever addiction does that for them.
So tell me a little. If you could just explain a little bit more. So the abuse increases the need for what? What does that do?
Abuse takes away the ability of the soul to shine in the way that it's supposed to in this world. When our soul is getting the nourishment that it needs, it shines in the beautiful way that it was put in this world to do. But that's not to say, people were sometimes put into abusive lives, into lives from childhood on. There's abuse. There are children. So many children born today are born addicted to opioids. They're born with heroin addictions. I mean, what chance were these children given from the very beginning, these infants? But they still have souls. Underneath all that addiction, they still have the possibility to shine. It's going to take a lot more work than somebody that grew up in just such a loving environment and a joyful environment. But it's possible. And I think, what my book has to deal with, I feel it's a very groundbreaking book, in that it's showing that all addictions have a spiritual basis, and all people still have their souls intact, as pure as it ever was, but we have to access that soul. It's been covered with lots and lots of garbage if there's been abuse. So that's what we have to access, and it takes more work for that person and for other people supporting that person.
So why children? Why do you start? You are about to release your memoir, which is like you said, your first adult book, correct?
Yeah.
But why kids? Why do you feel that and how, more than the why and the how, I think is so crucial. How do you take such a weighty, scary topic like sexual abuse and how do you infuse it in positivity when you are presenting it to someone?
Right. The thing is, why do I want to reach children? Let me answer that question. Is because then their entire lives will be different. If we can teach children skills from the very beginning, like one of my books, The Happiness Box, teaches happiness skills to children. I've spoken to children that it totally changed their lives. Once we had a guest, he came to our house, he was 21, he saw the book on my shelf, The Happiness Box, and he said, "I can't believe it, you wrote that book?" He said, "I was bullied as a child, like tremendously." He said, "That book saved my life, because every day I'd come home, I'd get into my happiness box and I'd get happy again. I'd think of all the good things in my life so that I could go back to school the next day. Otherwise I couldn't get there, I mean, and this skill lasts for life. I want to teach children. And of course, the most important people to reach are children. And because then they will have the skills forever, not just for one life, for an eternity. So basically, with the Let's Stay Safe book and Private Places, what can I say? It just had to be done. I mean, and how do you present it in a way that won't scare children? There's no reason to be scary. You just present the facts. I mean, you just tell children that, you show them that it could happen to them. You show them that sexual abuse is most common with people that you know, not people that you don't know. This is something that my children never knew. It's something that when my children were being raised, it was not common knowledge. stranger danger was being taught, but that that almost all sexual abuse happens from people that the children already know was not known. And
so that's great. So how do you take that? I mean, the stranger danger makes sense in the idea that you don't want to freak kids out. So you sort of create this like dark, shadowy other. And you're right, that so rarely happens. But on the flip side, it's the person. So how do you create a reality without making kids consistently freaked out and on guard?
In a sense, we do have to be on guard. I was a very naive person for a lot of my life. And it was only as an adult that this came into our lives, and I had to learn about it. So it's good not to be naive too. We have to know that, I mean, a lot of these things happen with brothers, uncles, step-parents, that those are very common things. And I don't want to say very common, but it happens. And
you're saying that the percentages that happen, that's usually from whom it happens.
That exactly. And they need to know that if a young child needs to know that if somebody is saying to them it's okay to do things like this, to touch parts of their body that should be covered with a bathing suit, they have to know it's not okay. If nobody tells them, they're not going to know it. And so we have to very calmly, and in a joyful way, just let them know that they can't let anybody touch them inappropriately. So
one of the issues, and I don't know if you've written about this yet or in the past, but one of the things that I was exposed to early in my life, I remember third grade probably more, and I found it, and unfortunately it's happened more and more, that Jewish people who are irreligious are exposed to, like the Holocaust and all of the, the anti-Semitism, which unfortunately is becoming more and more of a reality, and, terrorism and all these crazy things. It's like, you really have to, and I'm thinking in my mind, I want to like raise my kids in a box so that, I can sit down with them when they're, 13 and be like, okay, this is called the Holocaust. Let me try to frame it the way I want you without being freaked out. How do you, it sounds like you would completely disagree with that. How do you take all of these really challenging issues that, again, there's an attack this morning, and it's just like, in the commute, in everyday life, how do you take reality and shift it and filter it through a child's lens in a way that they're aware of it and it doesn't sort of freak them out about life?
Yes, good question. I'm going to bring up another book here. This is called I Lost Someone Special. This book, actually, I was commissioned to write this book by an organization, Chevra Lomdei Mishnah, mitzvahs we can do in memory of a loved one. So basically, this teaches you that you have an eternal relationship with someone when they pass away. It teaches us actually not even to be afraid of death. It's about exposing children to the concept of death and showing them that when someone passes, they're not gone forever from your life. They're passing into another world, and you still can keep a relationship with them by doing mitzvahs in their memory and keeping the connection going. What I mean to say, that's one example, that we can always, everything that happens is ultimately for the good. So if we have that frame within what we teach our children, it takes away an overriding fear. Then it's why we became Torah observant, because we didn't want to live in a haphazard world that made no sense. That's scary. Living in a world where you could walk down the street and be bombed or attacked, and that's what we wanted to get away from. We wanted to know that you know what? It made less sense to us to believe a world like that than to believe that there is actually a plan to all this. There's an ultimate plan. There's a lot of pain in living. Pain is part of growth, but it's all for an ultimate good. And when that fills our homes, then the children have a sense of peace and calm, and they understand that difficult, painful things happen, but we're going to get through this. Even even if it's not in our lifetime, that we see how things are ultimately good, we're going to see it eventually. Our souls will get to see it because we believe in more than just our physical bodies. We know that our souls go on forever. So it's a different kind of life.
Clearly, you've become a spokesperson for this, and I'm sure that puts you in proximity to and being around and talking to people that are going through all of these very, very difficult challenges. How has that impacted your life, and how have you become different in the process of writing all these books?
How have I become different in the process? I mean, my life has just become so joyful. I don't know what to say. I'm just so I'm so grateful for how my life has gone. Even
I want to share. Just like it's a crazy thing for me. There was a, I sort of touched a lot of the dark before I was religious. I was always in love. Again, I started at third grade with like reading like serious Holocaust stuff, and as I got older, it really, I got into World War I and World War II and the Civil War, and I've always been such a fan of military history. There was a book I read in high school that was so horrific. It was called The Rape of Nanking, and it was about what the Japanese aggression in China in the beginning of, I think it was 1939, and I subsequently heard a podcast where they went through the book and they talked about it, and the author, who was, in some way distantly, probably not distantly, there's probably someone in her family had gone through that kind of a thing. The author at the end, she wrote this book. It was this aggression that had sort of been, like a lot of the stuff that happened in World War II, was kind of swept under the rug by history. She went back, she started holding people in Japan responsible for what happened. And as she became more famous and got more and more into it, she ends up committing suicide because it became such a real like nightmare that she was living for. And I just want to contrast that to what you just said and say you feel like you're even more joyous based on what your experience is as you get more and more entrenched in the unfortunate, or not going to say unfortunate, but the realities of life, of fear and loss and hardship and the horrors of addiction and all that kind of stuff. But your perspective become even more happy. It's a crazy thing.
Oh, because my soul is shining more and more. That's why. When a person gets to fulfill their purpose, of course, we never know what our purpose is in life, but I certainly feel like I'm getting to fulfill my purposes here. A lot of my purposes here, and when your soul is shining, you're just filled with, real ecstasy. That's really what it is. So that's what I want to help everybody to get to be able to let their own unique souls shine.
Okay, so help. How does a person start that process?
Well, that's what my books are about. I'm trying to teach these different skills. For instance, like what were the things that attracted me to Eastern religions, and what attracts so many Jewish people to Eastern religion? At the time, there was a book by Ram Dass, Be Here Now. He went to Harvard, and we were very into that. And so when I watched a podcast that a psychologist friend of yours did, and she said the same thing that I say when after I started learning about Torah, I realized that the studies that they're doing at Harvard and putting millions of dollars into for all this research, the knowledge is already there in the Torah. And that's what I discovered, after graduating from Harvard and learning at Or Sameach. I found out, oh my gosh, this is what they're just studying now. And we know this already. This is ancient wisdom. So like the Eastern religions that, Jewish people are very drawn to. And I'm a big yoga enthusiast. I love yoga. Is the be here now concept, being in the moment. So think about it. What is Judaism filled with? All day long, Judaism is about gratitude. All day long, we're saying blessings for everything. What other religion has this? We are all day working on an awareness of having gratitude for the most simplest things in life. after we go to the bathroom, we say a blessing, thanking God that everything's working right in our bodies. I mean, who else has that? You know, Judaism is so amazing this way in teaching us. And everything we pick up a drink, a water, any little thing we make a blessing. Shahakol niyeh bidbaro. Everything that Hashem made, with everything, you know, it's all from Hashem's words to us. These are all expressions of a creation, an amazing creation. So like our whole day can be just such a bliss experience if we, you know, focus in on it. And really, like, it's very popular of all these things, like, you know, the whole Zen thing and everything is to be in the moment. And that's exactly what Judaism is teaching us, to be in the moment and appreciate all the blessings in our lives.
And what's interesting, I guess, you know, I forgot who publishes most of your children's books. It's mostly Art Scroll or another publisher.
A lot of my books, yeah, a lot of them were published by Judaica Press. So
Judaica Press.
First I had a lot of books only Jewish, and now I'm also publishing books in the regular mainstream market now for reaching out to anybody with spiritual concepts that are not only Jewish concepts, but you know, but I mean they are Jewish concepts, but they have spiritual significance for everybody.
So let me ask you. So when you're speaking to now, you know, a predominantly Orthodox audience, or now that, you know, you became observant, but your kids didn't, you know, they were born observant, and I think we're seeing that kind of as a trend that the world as a whole, even within the religious world, is sort of missing and lacking, you know, the joy and that passion. The problem with structure and the problem with, you know, I think a lot of these systems is that in this day and age, we suffer from having that mindfulness. And even a person, you know, like my kids, God willing, like your kids, you know, people who are the descendants of the people that became observant and had these moments of, I remember, you know, sitting on the steps in the old city and be like, oh my gosh, like it's amazing. And my kids will never I don't think my kids will have that, because, you know, they were raised differently. How do you bring, to a certain extent, that feeling of aliveness into a system that is highly structured and, you know, through the premise of obligation, as opposed to just kind of doing whatever you want?
Exactly. It is highly structured, and it can become repetitive and rote very easily for everybody. I don't walk around in bliss all the time at all. But the point is, it has the potential for that. We have to put the energy into making it alive for us. I mean, that's what I think what I'm trying to bring out is that Orthodox Judaism has a reputation for being boring and structured and black on white and not colorful. So what I feel is we need much more to express that it is all those things. It is that there is structure, yes, and everybody has structure. I mean, for yoga positions, there's so much structure involved. For ballet, there's structure. In order to be able to dance, we need to get down the steps, and then it becomes a dance. So yes, and we can't expect. Oh, I remember after I became Orthodox, and then we moved into our apartment, and I wasn't going to classes all the time. Life started getting a little dull, and I was like, wait a minute. This was supposed to be like so spiritual every minute. And that's when I had that realization, wait a minute, I'm supposed to make my own heart stir. I can't expect, you know, the inspiration to be coming all the time from other places. We got to do this internally. We have to make our own souls shine. But like I was saying, people that have been abused need more support to do that. It's just necessary. And that's what we have to do for each other. Everybody has to give support to each other so that we can help each other's souls to shine.
But if you would have like one lesson that you feel is the most important for a parent to impart on their child in order to make them successful and happy, and, you know, what we want for our kids, what would that be?
I'm going to give over again what Rav Noach said, because it blows people's minds. That we are here to experience the greatest pleasure possible in life. I really think most people miss that. When I tell that to people, they go, we are? Like, oh, I thought people have the sense like God is after them to punish them and all kinds of things like that. Again, I'm going back to abuse, but especially people that have been abused have this concept of an external God that wants to punish them. And it is so important that people internalize God. We have, all of us, a part of God within us. And our mission here in life is to let that part of us shine. And sometimes, especially people that have been abused, it's very important to strengthen their internal locus of control. And that means focusing on that your soul is a part of God. The best way to comprehend God, I have a book about that, the invisible book about understanding God. Oh, and this book is for anybody. Where is God? That's a new book. Oh my gosh. But the invisible book, the Jewish book, is about all the things we believe in that are invisible. Because, some people that don't believe in God, they're like, I've never seen God, so you can't believe in God. But look, we believe in wind, it's invisible. We believe in electricity, it's invisible. We believe in gravity, it's invisible. We believe in time, it's invisible. There's so much we believe in that's invisible. So I totally lost track of what I was saying again. Oh, but the point is that we each have a piece of God within us. That's our soul. The best way to understand God who is so incomprehensible, is to think of everybody's soul together as being God. Like that's the closest we can come to understanding what God is. If we think about it that way, it's not like an external presence that wants to attack us. And I feel like that really has to be changed to enjoy life more, to have more pleasure, is to realize that a part of God is within us, and our purpose here in life is to express our own uniqueness in this world. And we have all these mitzvahs to do. These are guidelines for living. They're guidelines for living because we need some structure. Otherwise, I know what life was like for me when there was no structure and that's when life felt scary, when there were no boundaries. And I loved all different types of philosophies, and I love the concept of Shabbos, but without these different guidelines of how to keep Shabbos, it was just like a nice concept. I needed to get my body involved as well as my soul, and that's what the mitzvahs do. They get our bodies involved so that our bodies can work in tandem with our souls. So that's what it's all about, infusing. We're here to express more joy, and from childhood on, hopefully that could be a part of everybody's home. Jewish, non-Jewish, everybody's home needs more joy and love. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I feel so happy and inspired for having this conversation. I really appreciate it. Ask, how do people find out more about you? Where can we find your books? How do we get in touch with you? I heard you have a memoir coming out. You do speaking gigs. How do we get more?
So you could just go to Bracha Goetz, Amazon. If you Google Bracha Goetz, Goetz, you'll find me. I enjoy doing presentations. I love going places and doing that. And
Bracha, thank you so much. I so much appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and review our podcast on iTunes, which will allow you to be the first ones to know when new episodes are updated. Also, please visit our website at ojchamber.com. And if you aren't yet a member, please make sure to sign up. Membership is free. Thank you so much, and speak to you soon.